It was supposed to be just another interview. Tiffany stood at the glass doors of the corporate office building, her hands clutching a thin folder with her resume inside slightly bent at the edges from weeks of use. Her suit wasn't expensive. In fact, it had been borrowed, dry-cleaned 3 times, and stitched at the waist where the thread had come loose. But she held her head up, because even if her clothes didn't speak power, her dignity did. She walked in with quiet hope, but she didn't know that cruelty was already watching her. In a corner near the reception desk, a group of white interns were laughing over coffee and scrolling through their phones. One looked up and whispered to the others, "Is that one of the applicants? She really thinks she's going to get a job here, dressed like that?" A receptionist sneered, adjusting her glossy badge. And then Davis saw her, tall, pale, and cocky. An intern who had never known a single real struggle in life. He leaned back in his chair and smirked. Some people just need to be reminded where they belong. Tiffany didn't hear them, but she felt it, the weight of being watched. Stripped before anyone even asked her name. Still, she walked on. Her heels tapped nervously against the marble floor as she headed toward HR. Then came the moment that would burn itself into her forever. As she passed a hallway, Davis stepped behind her, fast, loud, and bold, and with a sudden, humiliating tug, he pulled at her skirt. It tore. The room froze. Gas. Snickers. Phone cameras came up. Tiffany stood still, her back to the wall, one hand trying to cover herself, the other holding tightly to her resume. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was silent. "Oh, relax," Davis laughed loudly. "It's just a joke. You don't belong here anyway." Tiffany's eyes didn't even blink, but inside, something shattered. She felt the laughter echo in her ears, felt the weight of every no, every door slammed in her face, every time she had been told she didn't fit in. Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She quietly stepped aside, reaching into her small purse, her phone in hand. She dialed. A small voice came from her, soft, steady, broken. "Baby." It happened again. "Come now." In a quiet corner of the building, Tiffany sat with her back to the wall, trying to keep her torn skirt together with shaking hands. Not long after, her 6-year-old daughter arrived with a kind neighbor. Tiffany held her close, brushing a hand over the girl's hair. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, even though nothing felt okay. She had been applying for jobs for months, rejected again and again. Not because she couldn't work, but because she didn't look the part. Her clothes were too plain, her hair too natural, her presence too bold for the comfort of fragile people. As her daughter rested her head on her lap, Tiffany glanced at her phone. There were unread messages from her husband. "Let them laugh. Tomorrow they'll know." She kissed her daughter's forehead and wrapped her arms around her. Then she closed her eyes, still holding her worn resume against her chest like a shield. Earlier that day, the HR manager hadn't even looked up when Tiffany walked in. The receptionist had barely offered her a seat. "She thinks she can walk in here dressed like that," someone had whispered just behind the desk. They all smiled at her face, but behind her back, they rolled their eyes. Tiffany didn't cry when the skirt tore. She didn't yell when she was laughed at. She didn't break when the cameras rolled. But someone else did. 10 minutes later, when the office was back to its usual hum, a loud swing shattered the quiet. The glass doors flung open. In walked a tall, black man in a charcoal suit. Early 40s, smooth dark skin, no tie, no hesitation. His eyes were fierce. He wore a gold wedding band. His polished shoes echoed as he walked directly into the center of the room. "Can I help you, sir?" a security guard asked, stepping forward. But before anything else could be said, the receptionist went pale. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That's the new CEO. They hired him last week." And silence swept across the room like a storm. He didn't look around. didn't ask for help. He walked directly up to Davis, who was now standing awkwardly near his desk. The CEO spoke in a calm, deadly voice. "Tell me, which part of ripping a woman's clothes in public fits our company values?" Davis stuttered. "I didn't mean. You're done. Right here. Right now." The words landed like a hammer, and for the first time that day, it wasn't Tiffany who stood frozen in shame. It was him. The room was still spinning from the moment the new CEO, Marcus, walked in and ended Davis's career with one sentence. But he wasn't finished. "Boardroom. Now." His voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. Power doesn't always need to shout. Within minutes, key executives were seated. HR head, legal counsel, senior managers. Everyone who had sat quietly while women like Tiffany were humiliated, dismissed, and forgotten. On a large screen, Marcus pulled up security footage. The moment Tiffany's skirt was yanked. The laughter. The phone's recording. The mockery. No one could look away. Then, from the corner of the room, she appeared again. This time not as a victim, not as an applicant, but as something more. Tiffany walked into the boardroom beside Marcus, dressed in a clean company jacket someone had given her, her head lifted high, the tear in her skirt now covered, the pain in her heart still fresh, but her eyes, they had changed. She looked like someone who had finally been seen. Marcus looked at every face in the room and said words no one expected. "This isn't just about a ripped skirt. This is about power and silence and the systems we've built that protect people like Davis while women like my wife suffer in the shadows." Gasps again. Wife? Yes. Tiffany wasn't just another black woman looking for work. She was the wife of the new CEO. But that wasn't the point. Because Marcus wasn't fighting for her just because she wore his ring. He was fighting because the system tried to tear her down, and the world watched. "She didn't just apply for a job," Marcus said. "She walked into a building where power protects cruelty. And I walked in to burn it all down." He turned to the HR head. "You're done too. You allowed this culture to fester." One by one, the foundation began to shake. He ordered an emergency diversity and inclusion audit of the entire company. From hiring practices to internal culture, from boardrooms to break rooms. Every department would be reviewed. No more looking away. No more fake smiles. No more silence. Days later, Tiffany walked through the same doors again. The same marble floor. The same glass walls. But everything had changed. This time, people stood up when they saw her. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Someone handed her a new badge. Executive Culture Liaison. Her salary was generous. Her voice was now policy. And the girl who was once laughed at for her suit now stood in rooms where decisions were made. Decisions that would protect women like her. On her way to her new office, Tiffany passed a tall poster on the wall. One that the company had put up under her guidance. It read, "No silence in this space. Report. Rebuild. Rise." She smiled, because once upon a time, people saw a black woman walk into a building and assumed she was weak. But what they didn't know was this: sometimes she owns the building. She just hasn't worn her badge yet. Later that day, Tiffany picked up her daughter from school. They walked hand in hand through the parking lot. The little girl looked up at her and asked, "Mommy, did they make you cry today?" Tiffany stopped, crouched down, and brushed her daughter's hair behind her ear. "No, baby," she smiled. "Today, they cried instead. If you've ever been underestimated, mocked, or made to feel like you don't belong, this story is for you." Comment: Power doesn't wear a suit, it walks in truth. Share this story if you've ever felt invisible. Subscribe to Fame Tales for more stories that flip power upside down. Because one day they'll laugh, but tomorrow they'll know.